All right. Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. It's been years in the making of this.
Has been years in the making. It's crazy because here's what happened is I saw you were about to leave the Arctic Monkeys after party at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery, and someone was like, Emile Hirsch is here. And I was like, oh my gosh, because you're one of my favorite actors. Dude, Into the Wild, changed me forever,
Thank you so
know?
much, yeah.
And so I, ran over to you, and I was like, hey, you want to come on my podcast? And then you told me that you were working on music and stuff.
Yeah.
And then that's kind of how we got in touch with everything.
Yeah. And that was a couple years ago. So I had done a bluegrass record for this band, Hysterical Kindness, which is the name of a band in a movie I was in, All Nighter. And it was just originally it was just like a joke. We were like, okay, well, we're gonna record some real songs for this movie, and we did, and it was just it was a blast.
Yeah. So you sent me over that project, and it was it was so good because there's it was kind of folky and banjo and stuff like that.
And the character of Martin in the movie All Nighter that I played, he was a banjo playing bluegrass singer in the band. So the movie and the role kind of dictated what we were gonna do.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like an opening into the world of music because I always loved music, and I was like a freestyler in junior high and high school, and I was all about that. And I'd done a lot of writing over the years, but this was 5 years ago when that movie happened. But we did a cover of Bob Seger's Night Moods.
Oh my God, I love that song.
And I took it over to one of my good friends who's I respect him so much. And he heard it and he's like, this is cool. And he kind of paused and he's like, why don't you make some originals? And he kind of looked at me with this challenging vibe. And I was like, you're right. We should make some originals. Why not? I'm trying to get in the mindset of this character. By the way, the movie got 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. I was so annoyed by it. I was like, come on, man. Give me a break. But me and these guys, Chris Llewellyn and Brian Cohen, who were actually friends of the producer's brother. Chris originally had been hired to be my banjo teacher.
Okay.
So Chris came over to the house, and these guys are the greatest, most artistic guys, but they're out of This Is Spinal Tap. So it was just the most rock and roll dudes imaginable. They get out of the car and there's steam coming out, you know what I mean? Or smoke. And so I would be constantly writing these melodies and the lyrics and all the background of junior high and high school freestyling and writing. It kind of came back to me, and I was able to sort of do it quicker than I anticipated. And I realized over the years with all the rap writing in high school I was doing, that was melody too. I just didn't necessarily realize it. So Chris and Brian and we worked. So I would basically write songs, and then they would just play basic piano chords. We would record the vocals, and then Chris and Brian would go off and make the whole entire song, and then play it for me at the end. So we kind of had our own respective creative freedoms.
Yeah.
And we made, I think it's 13 songs on that whole album, and we put it out as the movie came out. And for me, it was a really great learning experience and something that I realized I had a lot of fun doing. And so after we released the little album online, Hysterical Kindness, Simple Things, if anyone is curious, after we put it out, I didn't stop songwriting. And
it tapped something within you where you're I enjoy this.
I really got something deep out of it, and it wasn't just something that I would do if I was miserable. Mm-hmm. I could do it to it almost became a form of journaling or something, which is something that I've done a lot of in the past. I think in some safe there's a duffel bag literally of journals that's completely filled up. Yeah, it's
so good that you do that. I wish that I did more of that.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, you can overdo it because I don't think I've ever gone and read any of it.
Yeah,
literally.
But it doesn't
there's
matter.
So much. I know, but
I think it's I think there's so much power that comes out when you just write out how you feel. I think it's such a therapeutic good thing to do.
And so for a couple of years, so the hysterical kindness thing was like 5 years ago. And then so for about 2.5 years, it was like me, who I don't actually play any musical instruments. It was like writing these songs in solitude for like years. And I finally, it got to the point where I was like, I'm writing all these songs. I don't have any music. I can't play any music. I need to put this stuff to music. Like, this is ridiculous. I have so many of these.
Yeah.
So I started just reaching out to anybody I knew. And I went to Hamilton High School in Los Angeles, which is a music academy magnet. So like Zane Carney went there, like some really,
all the Carneys.
Yeah, amazing.
You actually know my friend, two of my friends, Kevin Bavona and Dash.
Yeah,
yeah,
Kevin and Dash.
Yeah.
I mean, Kevin in high school.
Kevin Bavona's from the Interrupters, by the way, everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, he's amazing. And it was funny because I recently saw Kevin because I was actually working on a song with these other guys at his house.
At their house, yeah,
in his back garage.
Yeah.
And it was a thing where in high school, Kevin looked like the youngest guy in the entire school. Like, it literally looked like a kid had stolen his older brother's clothes and, like, somehow, like, conned his way onto a high school campus. Like, he looked that young and was that small. And I hadn't seen him in, like, I don't know, 16 years. I mean, some absurd amount of time. And me and these guys are working in the garage, and, like, the door opens. And, like, I hadn't seen Kevin in, like, 15, 16 years. And he walks in. And he, like, kind of had, like, facial hair. And I was, like, seeing the guy that looked like the youngest guy still looking really young, but, like, with a beard and, like, kind of older. I was like, this is so ridiculous.
Oh, my God, such a trip. But, yeah, so many creative people came out of that school. Like, Nipsey Hussle, what's his name?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ermias.
Okay.
Nipsey Hussle.
Yeah. Like, he came from there.
Yeah, he was in my class. I remember seeing him around. He was always real quiet and kind of cool and just had like this really just a cool vibe. I don't think we really ever got to know each other. He sort of knew my friend Ari, who was there. But it was a very eclectic group of people. So that's putting it really mildly.
Yeah.
I mean, Hamilton.
Was it like a smaller school?
No, it was huge.
Really?
What was so cool about it? It's at Robertson and the 10. What was so cool about that high school was it was like a music academy and a humanities magnet, but it was like 2,500 kids in the school. Like, there were a lot of kids in the school. So I was super into like hip hop. I was like Eminem and Jay-Z and Tupac and like just freestyling. And I remember I signed up for this freestyle competition. Like, literally signed up for it, and it was supposed to be in the auditorium. This is like 11th grade or something, and I show up, and like they shut it down before we were gonna go. I was like the only white kid there. It was crazy, and like
that would have been awesome.
And they were like, no, you guys, you gotta shut it down.
Why? They were afraid it was gonna get too crazy?
They said that the people that entered didn't have high enough GPAs to represent the school at an event. It's pretty lame.
That is lame. Yeah.
So the kids all grabbed me, though, and we went outside, and we went under the tables, and we did this massive freestyle competition. I was, like, scared out of my mind. I don't even think I had that many good lines, and it was, like, a huge crowd. And it was, like, a section of the school that, like, our school was – it wasn't that it was segregated, but it was kind of segregated. So it was, like, we kind of, like – it was just a unifying experience, you know.
Everybody wanted to see
everybody
what was going
came
on.
together, and it was like kids that didn't normally hang out with each other were. It was really cool.
I feel like you have to have a lot of guts to be able to freestyle, you know, around a big crowd. Like, there's a lot of pressure.
I mean, I was scared out of my mind, so I don't know what I was thinking. I mean, yeah, it was wild. I remember there was one line that like that really pissed this one dude off. And he was like it was like a scene out of a movie where he's like screaming to get the crowd to shut up so he could get me back. He's like, quiet. Like, it was like, I saw him like literally pawing at everybody to like quiet down. It was like, I was like, okay, this
my God.
So that was sort of my background with a lot of that. And I basically had this big like binder basically of songs. And I started finding different producers, reaching out to people that I knew, like from high school, and just being like, hey, are you interested? I'm interested in putting something together. I just really want to. It was just like a natural and extension of desire.
Yeah.
And I started making songs with a couple of different guys, but everyone was really talented, but it didn't quite hit that thing where I just wanted to keep playing it again and again necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it would be satisfying on a certain way, but it wasn't like a full scope satisfaction.
Yeah.
And then my buddy Matt Smiley and his girlfriend Justine Wexberger, they have this French friend, because Justine was raised in France, and they have this French friend called Mathieu Carretier. And he's like this big, stolid, bearded French, like he's like the French angsty Orson Welles or something. Like
I met him briefly.
With like a ponytail, and he's has this like very like dignified taste. Like he's a character, but he's really, really talented. And he had heard that I was kind of looking around and making new songs, and I remember Matt was like, "You should make a song with Matthew," and I was like, "Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I heard, and then I heard one song that he did that was on the soundtrack to Valerian with Alexian, "A Million on My Soul," and he made that song, and I love that song. And he talked to me at Thanksgiving, was like, "Let's do this, and so I went over to his place with my big song list, and we went through like each song.
And when you're showing him these songs,
I'm like,
did you have like a melody in mind for,
for
them?
all the melodies, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just like, I would just start singing them with melodies a cappella.
Okay.
And we went over all of them, and there was like one that he picked that he wanted to do.
Which one was it?
It was Nervous. It was what came to later be Nervous Wreck.
Okay.
And
I like that one.
And so we made it, and it sort of snowballed from there. I don't think we initially set out to make a record. We weren't like, let's make a record. I think we just started making stuff and ended up
one song at a time.
Yeah, and it ended up kind of consuming so much of our time, and was so kind of fulfilling, and sort of gave us this mission to do.
Yeah.
And we were able to devote the kind of time that it needed. You know, because I think that that's something that when I really get focused on something, I think having a really close collaboration where there's like full devotion is really important.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you know, you can work with people, but everyone's got stuff in their lives going on, and if you can't really hunker down and go all in, I think it's hard to get to like pay dirt in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I feel like all of the songs, the entire album it's very cohesive. To me, I feel like it would be so good like in a movie. It's like very cinematic. You know, it's like synthy, but then there are times where it gets kind of like 90s-ish.
Yeah.
Like Unsettled. That's like one of my favorite ones. And that one to me, I don't know, it's just so different, and it kind of reminds me of the 90s. And like Tooth Fairy is like such a good one.
Thanks.
What's the story behind that one?
So Tooth Fairy is based on a true story.
Okay.
That's like the funny little tagline for it. Where it's, to me, a little bit, the song is kind of like a tribute to my mother in a way, because she was my tooth fairy.
Mm-hmm.
And I stopped believing in like the Easter Bunny or certain things, but the Tooth Fairy, like, I tested it myself. I lost a tooth and I hid it under my pillow, but I didn't tell anybody. It was like, let's see if this is real. It was like that kind of thing.
And you're like how old at the time?
Oh, I must have been 4 or 5.
Gosh. Okay.
And I remember in the morning there was like money under the pillow or something. Tooth Fairy paid me off. And I just remember the sense of wonder and like, oh my gosh. Like I really believed so much in the Tooth Fairy. And it was kind of a tribute to the idea that my mother would make sure that she knew the tooth was out. Even if I didn't say. It was something like really meaningful in that way. You know, like kind of a parent's love in a way. You know what I mean? And cloaking it in the idea of a tooth fairy or something. And to me, it could be anyone in that way. Someone that really looks out for you like unconditionally.
Yeah.
And I think that was something that that was where that came from. And my idea of I've always had that kind of wonderful connection to the tooth fairy because of that. And I think that was sort of what that was.
Yeah, it's a sweet song. I feel like I could feel the sentiment of that story in the song, you know? And I think like because, you know, you're an actor and you do feel things so deeply, I feel like it was kind of a seamless transition for you to work on music and, you know, to do this. So, and you just put out a new one, American Dreamin'.
Yeah.
So that one's not on the album.
No,
it's like
no.
brand new. You just can't stop writing songs apparently.
Yeah, I mean we have a bunch more that we're still working on and mixing and stuff. And I mean, you know, I feel like because we don't have like a label or anything, like we just upload the music to DistroKid ourselves. We don't have the normal pressures and timelines and stuff, and
you can just do whatever you want, which is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, and like I totally respect the real musicians and that like this is what they do and they do it a certain way, and like for me it's just something that I do because I love doing it.
Yeah.
And that I'm sure that they all do that too, but when it's like your career, there's a certain extra kind of pressure in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
And you're not necessarily trying to like go on tour or anything like that because you're still like acting full time.
Yeah, and
all
like
that.
I mean, man, I have like zero confidence as a singer.
To like
Like
go on stage and do it,
I see like what Matthew does with like auto tune and Melodyne, and like he literally like makes it sound good. Like I have zero pretense that I'm like singing, and like it's almost like an abusive relationship where like Matthew will have a cigarette and he'll be like, "You're nothing with that," you know what I mean? Where like I feel like he's totally scared me off from ever wanting to play live ever.
Oh my God.
And I'll even be like, well, maybe we could play live, and he'll be like, but then there is no Melodyne. And I'm like, oh man, like that's like it's he's like literally like keeping me close through fear, you know?
Oh my God, yeah.
You're nothing without my Melodyne.
Oh my God. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
I know. I've like literally like, well,
Wow.
maybe someday I could play
He's like a
live, and he's like,
villain.
there is no auto tune. But it's like, you know, it's like sometimes I can hit the notes, but like, dude, we will literally be standing, and like it'll be a line of a melody I wrote, line I wrote. Here I am singing it, and it's like we do like 60 takes,
Yeah.
and he's like literally to the point where he's like hitting the keyboard,
so
like you're
frustrated with you.
fucking, you're not, like you cannot do it right. Like it's like he like yells at me, like it's hilarious, but it's like for some reason
God.
there's singers that like you turn that camera on them and they're gonna hit that note,
Right.
but for me, you turn that camera on me, I'm probably not gonna hit that note. I don't know. There's something about I don't know what it is. It's like my brain like short circuits.
Yeah.
You know.
Well,
So-
it's a completely different skill. You know, it's hard to sing, and you know, I took like singing lessons my whole life, and like I
Yeah.
love to sing, but it's like, I mean, it's hard. I have a lot of respect for people that, you know, do it like night after night.
Yeah.
But don't you feel like when you're doing like a scene or something, and they, you know, and they roll, like you can like nail it sometimes in the first take?
Sometimes
You
I don't
know?
know.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I mean, I mean, it's
It's
weird.
just a different skill set, you know?
Yeah, it
But
is.
if you took like voice lessons and if you really, really like tried to hone your craft, you might be able to do it.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, absolutely.
You never know.
But then I wouldn't have the French
You
guy
yelling
telling
at
me I'm
you.
nothing without him. You know what I mean? It's like
I would
I lose out on all that fun.
I would like kill to be a fly on the wall
Oh,
and like, watch
yeah.
that happen.
Yeah, no, it's super fun.
But coming to your album release party was really cool. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
having me there.
yeah, thank you for
and
coming.
I liked how you guys just like sneakily threw the album on.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, we're like listening to it right now. And it's like, it was so perfect for that setting. And I really just feel like it's, your album is something that people should listen to when they're driving. It's like a total like driving.
Night drive
Night
album.
drive 100%.
Yeah.
It's a night drive album. But so
Thank you.
good. Mnemonic. I don't even know what that means.
Mnemonic
That's
is
the name of the album, by the way.
there was a movie called Johnny Mnemonic that I saw when I was 9 and I loved, and the word always stuck out to me, and it's sort of a memory device, and that's what it is. A mnemonic is it's like a way of remembering things. Something is mnemonic.
Okay.
And I kind of liked I liked it because it sort of sounded sci-fi, and I liked the idea that whatever it would be, it's like these devices of remembering things in a way. Like a song is like it can connect you to certain memories.
Yeah.
And I really like that, and the idea that these songs are sort of testaments to memories that I've had or ideas that I've had, and can become the same for other people when they listen to it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you can remember very often where you were when you heard a song, what was going on with your life, all kinds. There's
100%.
just it's like memory connectors, and I really like that. So it's like.
I know. I feel like there's like a safety and a warmth, like when I go back and listen to an album that I loved when I was in like 7th or 8th grade or something like that, and I'm just like I can put this on and I don't have to think about anything, and I can just feel secure right now,
Yeah.
And then Love Is Real. What's kind of the story with that one, and you chose that one kind of as a single?
So Love Is Real. I had been obsessed with Drive by the Cars. And I was listening to this song.
That song is so sweet.
I was listening to this song over and over and over, and I was like, man, it's so moving. I remember I played it for my dad's girlfriend at this kitchen table, and she just like burst into tears.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I was so moved by it, and even it's interesting to be so inspired by a song and the message of a song and what it represented of like who's gonna drive you home and that sense of caring. And then so I had a couple versions of it, and it was like it was very different than what it ended up. And I kept kind of saying to Machi, I was like, let's work on that one. And he was kind of, we were thinking about doing other things at the time. And then I was like, one time just so insistent, like tonight is the night. And so we started to work on it, and we kind of discovered the song as we went along. And it was really kind of an amazing moment where Matthew and I were sort of sitting at the computer together, and we kind of finalized that hook on for Love Is Real. And just the sort of Matthew kind of sang out. He's like this really big guy, so when he sings like so quietly, and I have to like really lean forward. I'm like, and he was like, Love is real, because originally it was like Love is real. And I heard, and I was like, oh gosh, that's so. But we had this real, like, without getting too corny, like we had like tears in our eyes, and like we felt like we were really onto something special, and we were both moved.
Yes, it's a great one, and it also feels like it should be in the movie Drive, like the soundtrack. Very, like the first time I heard it, I was like, oh, this reminds me of that whole soundtrack and that whole vibe.
Yeah, I think Matthew knows 80s music really, really well, and I think he was inspired by definitely a bunch of different 80s bands. And it's great watching him work, because he really is so talented. And to get to sit next to him and kind of collaborate on the sound, and to see just how many thousands of samples there are that you can choose from, how many different instruments, how many filters on the instruments, what speed the instrument plays at. There's so many options, and to be with someone as a guide like Machu, and to see like the choices he makes and the choices we make together, it's really cool.
Yeah,
it's a real.
Well, the production is like so well done.
Yeah,
it's like ridiculously well done.
Yeah, and it's a testament to Machu's sense of perfection, because it's like, if Machu were a film director, he would be like the Stanley Kubrick or like the David Fincher type of director, where it's like, we're doing 50 takes, and we're like sitting at for every song, like we sat at the computer for endless hours just arguing over even the most tiny, minute things. And we're both kind of naturally very like obsessive personalities. And then when you kind of mix us together, we spent
like so
a
long
ridiculous
just to make one
amount.
song.
Yeah. I mean, it was really a thing where.
And you made a lot of songs too. Like that. There's a lot of songs on the album.
I know.
Like,
there's
my
like
God.
15 tracks on the record. By the end, you're just like, I give up, man. I know there was a version where I was like, should we just do these like 11 tracks, like the ones that we know people are gonna like, or should we put those like 4 really weird ones on? And I was like, think about how much time we spent on those 4 weird ones. I was like, it's not like we've got a label down our like, like just do it.
Yeah, seriously.
I was like, there's gonna be one person out there that will like it. Okay.
Oh yeah, 1000%. Well, I mean, it's like fully an incredible album. One of my favorites of 2019.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely feel like for Matthew and I, and sort of where we were artistically that year, I didn't really do any acting at all for that year, pretty much. I worked like a week on a movie, but that was it. And the whole time I was working on the movie, I was working on the album. And Matthew was sort of the same thing. We both kind of caught each other at a time where we really were wanting to do something that was all encompassing creatively, that would be like just completely satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of found each other at the right time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's so great, and I'm excited, just to keep hearing more from you and stuff.
Like that song, "My Best Friend," which is the first song.
I like that one a lot.
That song is really about. It's funny because people hear the song and they're like, it's like about an ex or something like that. And it's actually about my sister, because we grew up, and it's like you've got these siblings, and when you're kids, they're your best friend.
Mm-hmm.
And my sister lives in Puerto Rico now, and she's married, and she's got 3 kids, and it's kind of like, I was working this summer in Puerto Rico, and I remember she came over to my hotel, and we actually met up outside. No, she came to my hotel, and then we walked down the street, and we got food, and there were like no kids, like no one around. It was just me and her, and it was like a dynamic that it had been a really long time, but just because that's the way life is. Life changes. But like having that kind of like meet up where like we were both adults, but for that night we were kind of kids again. That was sort of how the sentiment of like waiting for you down that road. You know what I mean? Like there was something, I don't know, there was something kind of I got back to my room, and I was kind of very, very moved that night thinking about it and kind of reminiscing on just how times change, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And did you guys grow up in LA?
Yeah, we grew up in LA.
Okay. What's the age difference?
3 years, two and a half.
She's older?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she's my older sister.
Yeah.
She's great. And she was the one that originally like was into acting and musical theater, and like she was a better performer than I ever was too. I mean, she was great in plays and musicals.
So that kind of like planted the seed for you when you were young.
I think so, yeah.
So how did you even, start with acting to begin with, really, like when you were young?
I think it was a thing where I saw a bunch of movies, and Home Alone in particular, and my dad's uncle, Cliff, and his wife, Gladys, they're like
Gladys,
98 now,
yeah.
Literally.
Wow.
They were on-set studio teachers, so they were the ones that like tutored kids that were in movies.
Oh, okay.
And I think that that made it seem possible. They were like, "Yeah, you could do it. Like we work with these kids," and I was like, "Whoa, maybe I could do that." And that was I was probably like 10 by the time I actually had like a headshot and went on an audition for like a commercial or something in LA.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't seem so far-fetched, because it was like, oh yeah, my dad's uncle, like he works with these kids, and it seemed sort of possible. And it wasn't until I was like late teens though before I really like started doing like acting.
Right.
I mean, I'd done like little parts on TV shows, like guest star spots and things like that sort of got me used to saying lines or being in under the gun in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of train that muscle.
So what was like the first movie that you did, and was it scary, like just knowing that you were, the pressure was on?
The first movie I did was a movie called The Dangerous Lives of Altar Boys, and I was 15. And yeah, it was sort of scary in a way, but I had a great time, and it was a real adventure. I mean, great other actors, Kieran Culkin and Jenna Malone and Jodie Foster and Vincent D'Onofrio, just a great group.
So good. That was a great film.
I remember the director had me do like 5 or 6 auditions or something like that. He was like really not sure if he should give me the part.
Oh my God.
I know. And
I would be a wreck.
It's like another callback. I was like,
and then like, how do you? Maybe this is a dumb question, but when you're like having to like memorize your lines and stuff like that, how do you approach that?
It just depends on how like lazy you're feeling. You know what I mean? Like, because like you could probably train yourself to like learn the phone book if you really wanted to.
Yeah.
That's just.
But is there like a trick to it?
No.
Or is it's just going over it over and over and saying?
I mean, there's some actors that are like the trick is just having a photographic memory and looking at it.
I don't have that. I don't have that.
I don't think I have that.
It's hard for me to memorize stuff. Like I have to read things just over and over. Yeah, and it's like it's crazy.
I'm kind of the same way. I don't know. I don't have any set technique.
I
don't know. I think you can just look at it enough You know, as soon as you're familiar enough with something.
And do you have someone like reading lines with you when you're practicing, or?
I think sometimes I do, but a lot of times I don't.
Yeah.
It just depends.
Yeah.
Some actors like don't like to rehearse at all. You know, they're like, I'm not gonna rehearse it.
What? That's crazy.
That would be fun to do a play and to be working with an actor who like wouldn't rehearse.
Oh my god.
So it's like, okay, he's gonna come in. It's gonna be a 2-hour play on stage.
Surprise!
You haven't rehearsed it.
Oh my god.
Opening night is tonight.
That would be interesting.
That'd be a good experiment.
Yeah. If, like,
that would be weird.
That would be weird.
I bet you would be a really good performance.
Yeah. You should
you'd
produce
be like, it was so spontaneous.
Okay, and then we have to talk about Into the Wild.
Yeah.
Because I like that movie is so special to me. I think I saw it in theaters and like cried a lot. I was like before I got sober, I was like very angry at the world, you know, and I felt like I grew up and like everything was a lie and that, you know, nothing really was as I thought it was going to be. And so like watching this movie and seeing this character, I mean, I know, and I read the book too, like when I was younger, you know, and I just like, here was this person who was just like fed up and young and just like through, you know, donated his whole like life savings and then left and went out into Alaska, you know. Did Sean Penn just call you, or how did this all come about, like you being in the movie?
Well, I was 20 at the time, and Sean had seen a cut of this movie, Lords of Dogtown, that I did.
I love that one.
And Sean had just gotten the rights to the book to make it, and he saw an early screening of Dogtown, and he called me and was like, "Oh man, like you smoked it, kid." And that was, you know, he was just very nice, and I was like, "Man, this guy's so cool."
Yeah,
Sean
right?
Penn.
I know.
He's like, "Let's get together." So we got together, and I remember just hanging out with him, being like, "Man," like, because he was like my deity, you know what I mean? As an actor, and just like he was just the man. And he didn't tell me what it was for like the first couple times we hung out. We just like had dinner, and he kind of got to know me. He probably didn't want to get my hopes up if he was like, eh. But at a certain point, I think he must have been thinking I was sort of the guy for the job, because he gave me the book to read. And I went home that night and I read the book, and I was like, this is so familiar. What is going on? And I realized that I had seen the episode of 2020 that John Krakauer, the author of the book, had been featured on when I was like 9 years old. And it had a really big impact on me, and I never forgot it. Like this guy in this bus and adventuring, and it was so sad. And then that was sort of how Sean and I began our relationship, and I don't know how many months it was before we were shooting, maybe 8 months or something. But I lost a bunch of weight. I was like,
dude, you lost like
no, but people are like, oh, you lost weight for that movie. I'm like, you don't realize, like, when I got the part, I was actually like kind of overweight. So that's what people don't realize is like most of the weight loss that I did on that movie was just to look like I did normal in the movie. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sean was like, you know, the guy was really in shape. You know, he was a petite guy. It's crazy because talking about that movie, I guess, I don't know, it was like 13 years ago or something like that. And I remember it all really well. But to have it have had such a big impact to where 13 years ago or 13 years later, people are still talking about it. And I still see like younger people that have been watching it. And it's just, it kind of has taken on a life of its own. And like even on like something like Instagram or something, like I'll get messages from every country that probably has Instagram about that movie. I've never been involved with a movie that had any kind of reaction like that other than that one. And I think it just goes beyond, like, it sort of speaks to the soul that in a way that goes beyond, like, entertainment for a movie or something like that. And I feel like it helps people work through a lot of things in their own lives and explore avenues of living that maybe they hadn't, or confront demons or false beings within or anything like that. And it's interesting, too, because the film does divide people. There's a lot of people that sort of see the glass half empty when it comes to McCandless. They're like, the guy was selfish, and he was this, and he was this, and he was this. And, you know, I think it's a mistake to worship any one thing in terms of McCandless. I think that you can take the good while also there's problematic elements of like not telling your parents or something like that. But part of what the movie's message is that like he learns wisdom along the way. He's not a guy who's saying that he has all these answers. You know, he's growing as a result of the experiences that he has.
Right.
And
he realizes that like everything in life is all about connection and being with other people.
Yeah.
He learns that in the end, but it's just like unfortunately it's too late.
And that's what sort of makes it so bittersweet and tragic. But maybe even though he learned it too late, you know, like through the power of art and movies and stuff, it's like maybe for other people they don't necessarily have to go through something like that. You know, it can kind of be their own private learning experience or working through whatever they have, you know.
Yeah. It's just like such a powerful one. I watched it like a couple months ago with a friend, and it was like just as good, you know.
Yeah.
And just
and Sean Penn did an incredible job directing that film. Like he was the only guy that could have done it.
Too. It's just like all the scenes in Alaska, just like, and you guys really did shoot there.
Yeah, we were in Alaska around like grizzly bears, and I mean.
Well, that scene where you're with the bear and you're like skinny as a fucking rail. It's gnarly. So you really were like, just there with you were just standing there with the bear.
The bear was just right there.
Oh my God.
And the trainer was like right behind me, and he's like, you know, just don't look the bear in the eye. And I was like,
oh my God,
I know. And I was like, oh my God, like imagine if this bear just suddenly got angry at me and just realized that he didn't like me.
Yeah.
And just decided to just swipe at my naked bare chest, you know, just and like it wasn't like we just like, oh, we got to take that with the bear. Good, thank God, move on. Like we shot that scene 3 separate days, 3 different times.
Wow.
3 different times.
Yeah.
Because Sean, there would be things about the scene that weren't quite right, and we tried a different location, and then we went back to the original location. So, like each day we would do the scene, like we would wrap, and I'd be like, all right, I made it.
I'm still alive
through today. Yeah. And then they'd be like, oh, we got to shoot again. I'd be like, more chance for bear to kill me. It's dangerous, though. I mean, they're dangerous creatures.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not Timothy Treadwell. I'm not Mr. Grizzly Man thinking it's all good with the bear.
Yeah.
I do not think like that.
You have to take so many risks, I feel like, as an actor. Like, or you just like have to be willing.
Normally,
to
they're emotional, though.
Yeah, true. Not risking your goddamn life. So, Lords of Dogtown. Fucking love that movie.
Thanks.
Did you already know how to skateboard? Did you have to learn how to skateboard for that? Like,
I kind of grew up skating.
Okay.
So I was fortunate in that I had all those kind of motor skills, muscle memory. I was really big into skating, especially like 9 on through like 15. I mean, that was all we did in like junior high, and I kind of stopped sort of in high school. It's like, no, I don't skate right now.
Yeah.
And then the movie came along. I was like, oh, I'm skating again.
So you played Jay
Adams, who was sort of like the craziest skater, the demon child skater. He's died in real life since.
Right. I remember that. Did you?
But I met him. I went out to Hawaii with the producer John Linson to like meet Jay Adams, and he must have been like 48 or 49. No, maybe not quite that old. Maybe like 45. I'm not sure. And he was still pretty crazy. Like, just hanging out with him, like you definitely had the feeling like anything could happen at any moment. But he was a sweet guy in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? He was nice, but there was a certain unpredictableness to him that like anything could, like there was just something that could go down at any moment.
Right.
To where you like I really got how that guy's mind and energy put on a skateboard would be so amazing.
Wild. Yeah.
And that was sort of what that hammered home to me when I met him in Hawaii. I was like, oh man, this guy's got the most like amazing vibe and energy. I was like, should I try to just like totally just imitate what that guy does? I was like, yeah.
I love that.
Because it's like there was just no other way to go about it. I mean, I could have just done a thing where I was like, well, I'll just that's the character. I'll just go play this like I decide. But I was like, no, I'm really gonna try to do what that guy kind of had, because he had a quality. Like I asked this guy who worked with Jay, I was like, what's Jay like? And he was like offended. He was like, Jay is Jay. And I was like, okay, thank you for the
whatever that
for the
means.
description. But it was really.
Then you realized.
But like
okay.
knowing Jay Adams a little bit, like I was like, yeah, Jay's Jay. Like that, there's only him.
Yeah.
He's the only guy like that.
How cool is that? That's really cool that you got to like spend time with him, and
Yeah, I was very fortunate.
Yeah. And so, what was it like getting to work with Heath Ledger?
Heath was great. He was like just a really compassionate, creative guy. Like really like sensitive, and I mean he was a great dude, and we all kind of looked up to him like he was like the older brother of everybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And even though he was like 25, I mean he looked like 35 when he was 25. He was like Aussie hunk, but we were like all 18, 19. But
oh my God, you're so young.
he was awesome though.
Yeah,
he was.
What
great.
a fucking legend of it, like dude, like one of the greatest actors ever.
Yeah,
you know?
he was so great, and like his
fake
performance in
the...
Brokeback Mountain
oh
was
God.
so good. I had a lot of respect for him. I was
Yeah.
like, he really believes in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Well, what a risk, it was a risky movie to do.
Yeah, and to have it be, I mean, that's one of my favorite performances is him in that movie. There's just him and Ang Lee, like Ang. And I remember I called Heath after I heard about it once it was released in Venice, and I think it did really well. And I was like, congratulations. And he was like, Ang is a great director.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he didn't take any of the credit. He's like, man, Ang is a great director.
Wow.
Yeah.
Have you ever acted in a movie and felt like it was going to be really good, and then like it comes out and it's like not at all what you thought it was going to be like?
Oh yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think any movie I've ever done is ever exactly what you think it's going to be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's always sometimes a movie's better than you think it's going to be, and sometimes it's maybe not as good.
Mm-hmm.
I think that expectations in making movies is sometimes a little dangerous, though. You know, when you put too much expectations on something or on work.
It's like anything in life.
Yeah, and I feel like there's healthy expectations, but I also feel like if you let something or criticism of something affect your sense of self-worth, I feel like that's a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, like if I were to do a movie and if people didn't like the performance, I don't think reading that should depress me or make me feel bad about me as a person.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of like a thing where if you feel that way, when people say something's good, you also need to temper yourself to that too. Because as soon as you buy into that dopamine rush of happiness if people say something's good, as soon as they stop saying it's good, you are going to go down like that. And I think that that's something that a couple of actors that are older than me have kind of hammered at home, that's important because in the long run, you know, you need to focus on other things, I think, than that.
Yeah, you want to stay like even. And
it's not cool. I don't think to like stake your sense of self-worth on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you know,
through other people's
because
opinions.
there's a lot of people that will just go down like that.
Oh yeah, totally. And it's hard to not let it affect you, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So working on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah,
I would imagine that was a really fun time.
I mean, it was so amazing. I've been the biggest fan of Quentin Tarantino for so long. Quentin was the first famous director I ever met in Hollywood. I was 14, 15, went to the Green Mile premiere. I had just signed with this manager. I was in like 9th grade in high school. And I was with a girl named Cherish Lee who also went to my high school, and she just happened to be there. Her mom was an actress. And they were at a table, so I went over to Cherish's table, and I said, hey, what's up? And then Quentin knew her mom and came over, and they started talking. And I just remember shaking his hand. I was like, I'm a huge fan of Reservoir Dogs. And he was like, oh, who's your favorite dog? And he said it so fast, and I was so nervous that like my mind fully short-circuited. And I was like, a Dalmatian? And he was like, oh, no, like you did. Like I couldn't have looked dumber in that moment. Like I couldn't have looked dumber.
That's the
I was
best
like,
thing
a
ever.
Dalmatian? Like I wasn't even sure if it was a Dalmatian. Is that what they're called? And then I was like, Mr. Blind. He's like, Mr. Blind. Okay, yeah, like Mr. Blind. And over the years, we would see each other, and you know, we had a couple of long nights and good times, and like, we always connected. You know what I mean? We've had cool times where we're like, he's a guy like you'll have dinner with, and you'll spend an hour spitballing a science fiction idea together for a movie. and he'll like add the idea and twist to it and turn around. So it was like
he like never stops creating,
and
thinking, and talk.
He's so much fun in that way,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we always sort of liked each other, based on what we knew of each other. And then I guess he saw this film that I did called The Autopsy of Jane Doe, which is kind of a scary movie, but it was sort of kind of like a little gem of a movie that not very many people saw, but of course Tarantino's going to see it.
Mm-hmm.
And he sent me a message. I got this message out of the blue, like on like Facebook or something. And he's like, this is Quentin really like Jane Doe. And I was like, it's like some weird account. I was like, is this you? And I was like, he's like, yeah, I might have something in a movie for you. And I was like, I really hope this is you now. And yeah, and this was like, that was like a year before we even shot anything. I mean, it was like, it was funny because I did like 3 movies between him telling me that he was thinking about me for this movie and then actually shooting the movie. But it was so cool because I was so excited about doing Quentin's movie that it made, my shoot on Never Grow Old and Freaks and this movie Peel, like all 3 of those movies I shot like in the back of my mind thinking that Quentin's movie was and it was like it was kind of cool because it was a real morale booster. It was like it's pretty much for an actor like
it's one of the biggest deals,
the most
ever.
exciting thing you can think of. I don't think that there's not a director, no offense other directors, but like you hear Tarantino, there wouldn't have been another director that I would have gotten as excited about just to like have full-blown excitement for a year straight.
Yeah.
And not even have read the script or anything. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Because there's no one like him. He's like such a unique personality, and all of his fucking movies are incredible.
They're so good. And he's such a good person, and he's so considerate and caring of people, and he feels so deeply, and he's a really great guy.
Yeah. So did you, like, when you read the script, did you have to like go over to his house and like read it and like all of that?
Oh, I read the script. I read the script in an office after I signed like a stack of paperwork swearing me to secrecy.
Yeah.
And I read the script, and then I like immediately walked into Quentin's office and we talked about the script. And it was so cool because I like loved it, and I got to immediately just talk about it and tell the writer how much I loved it.
Oh my gosh.
It was pretty cool.
So there's that one scene where you guys are like at the party, and just like everybody is there. You got to work with so many incredible actors. What do you really feel like? I don't know. Do you get inspired by being around these different people?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like Brad Pitt is for me all time, and DiCaprio, amazing.
Like unreal.
They're so great, and Margot Robbie, like her like Bombshell, and I mean Wolf of Wall Street. She's just done such great work. What was the name of the movie where she's Tonya Harding? I, Tonya.
Yeah,
so good, so good.
She should have won an Oscar for that.
I was just happy to be there, and I was felt very privileged to get to be on that set and to get to work with those people, and then to see. Whenever you make a movie, you never know like how it will be received. Mm-hmm. Usually, if you make a Tarantino movie, you have an idea,
right?
But like even then, you never.
Well, there was so much pressure. It was like everybody was like, "What's it gonna be like?"
Yeah, you never know. And then to have it be as successful as it has been is pretty crazy. It's like definitely the biggest movie I've ever been in.
Yeah, it's incredible. Do you approach like when you're playing a supporting role? Do you approach it any differently than you would playing like a lead?
I think sometimes you can in a way. I think that there's a temptation if you do supporting to make it like more character-y. Because you're just like, I can get away with it.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's good and sometimes that works, but sometimes like you don't need to do that, I don't know. If the right character calls for it, you could do that and you can get like a little more specific with it. As long as it doesn't feel like a distraction or it's bad. As long as it's good. I don't know.
Yeah.
You can kind of get away with a lot in acting as long as it's good.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like there's big and then there's big. Mm-hmm. There's really good big acting and then there's really bad big acting.
It just has
Same
to
thing
be
with
like...
subtle. There's really good subtle acting and then there's really boring subtle acting.
Yeah.
Where you're like, eh.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
It's like you have to fully commit. You have to like really own it. It has to be genuine.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know because I feel like I've been to like certain acting seminars and stuff, and I've seen a lot of actors talk about it, and it's like they seem, like the classes have made them like so keyed into like what works and like how to do it. And they speak the gospel. Like I'm like, they know exactly what they're doing. And then it's like, and action. And it's like they forgot everything that they just said. So there is some weird little X factor that is I don't know. It's just hard to necessarily know until you're doing it.
Yeah, totally. What in your life makes you happy?
My son.
He's so cute.
Yeah, he's just the greatest. He's just the greatest thing of all time. The greatest little dude ever. We have such a good time together. He's 6 years old. He's just the best. I'm very protective of him, and he's so brilliant and sweet and compassionate, and he's also a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
Let's not get it too twisted here. You know what I mean? Some parents can go a little overboard with praising their kids. I don't like that. Okay, you're still 6. You're still problematic. You're a problem child.
Yeah.
But for me, it's he's just the greatest. And I don't know. I find that even though I'm the guy from Into the Wild, like there is a certain like natural routine that I kind of tend to get into, and I can end up being a bit of a homebody at times, and I can also end up like not wanting to like go anywhere.
Yep.
Or like travel and stuff, which is kind of, I don't think people necessarily expect me to be that way, but like that kind of naturally can fall into those patterns. But that's sort of why working, on films and stuff is good, because most of the time if I do a film, it's out of the country or out of the state or something like that. So I get a little adventure, and then I get to come back home to my quiet little routine and just... Yeah.
It sounds like a nice little life you have going on for yourself, though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm there's a lot of happiness in it, and there's a lot of I think learning is so important, and being able to learn things in my own life and be there for my son and to pass down that knowledge. For me, that's so rewarding. You know what I mean? There's like, we had a conversation the other day just about fear. You know what I mean? It's just something like that where, as a kid, I think I was the most scared kid that I'd ever met. Like I was terrified of everything, anything. And so I feel like, I was able to, talk to my son about it in a way where it's like, I've been there. And that was that I think that meant a lot to him.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
You were just honest.
And, and it's like, it's like everybody feels like, that they're the only ones that have ever felt a certain way, or no one else has ever felt like them, so they can't tell anyone because no one's ever felt like that.
Yeah, totally.
Not like them, So I kind of, want to break that with him a little bit, but I don't know. I need to get back in shape, though. I'm going to do a movie in, 2 weeks, and I was like, I had a whole, workout plan. I had the whole, physical trainers.
Yeah.
And then, we had a legitimate excuse. We got into an accident on the freeway.
Yeah.
Which was crazy.
So scary.
Thank God we were fine, and the guy that got smashed behind us, he got it way worse than we did.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but it was right on the 101, and cars going by 80 miles an hour. I mean, it's so loud. And after that, you become hyper aware. Even now when I drive around, I'm I flash people if they're not driving, or I'll honk, and I even rolled down my window and yelled at somebody on the crosswalk because they weren't supposed to go. I was like, "Watch it, dude!"
Oh my god! No, really though, you become hyper aware. I got into 2 accidents within 3 months, neither of which were my fault. Just people hit me. Yeah, and it made me kind of nervous to drive, and I've never been a nervous driver, and just being
a nervous wreck.
Yeah, 100. That's me though. I'm always just I'm anxiety ridden all the time. But I'm just glad you guys are okay though.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
God.
I mean, there's there's just so much in the world. There's so much of everything. There's so much love. There's so much pain. There's so much tragedy. It's I feel like life is like a process of sorting it all out and finding ways to manage these unknowns that we deal with all the time. And for me, like right now, making songs is a really enriching experience for me, and so I'm so happy to be able to like have people actually listen to it and like connect to it in a certain way if they can. And like just this morning, this song Angel's Will that we have that was on Mnemonic, it's like our biggest song on Spotify, and it just had like 100,000 streams, which if you're dealing in the world of like, Bieber, who's like 2 billion streams the first day, like that. But like to us, where we just basically made this in Matthew's living room.
It's massive.
It's like crazy with no label. I mean, that's...
Well, and if you even just sit down and think about a crowd of 100,000 people, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like we get so like, it's just there's so much pressure for like numbers and and like social media. And I'm like, even like for me, like just like little old me, like 12,000 people following me on Instagram, I'm like, okay, like that's not that much in comparison, but you know what? It's like that's a big group of people.
That's
a
lot of people.
It's a lot of people that I get to talk to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
do you think you've ever even talked to 10, 12,000 people in your entire life?
I don't know. Probably not.
That's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people. So, it's like it's good to just like take those wins. Like don't let anything diminish those wins because that's a big deal for you not having a label, for you just like following this passion project and putting something out in the world that you love and means something to you, and it means something to other people too, and they're affected by it, and so it's exciting.
And the interesting thing too is like once you put a song out there, the album just came out like October 25th. Mm-hmm. It's only like January. Like,
I know. And you already have a new one out.
You never know, like, gosh, like 10 years later, it'll still exist in that kind of, in that kind of echo chamber. And who knows where it will go.
Yeah.
It's kind of exciting. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah. Well, I'm just excited to hear more music from you. And, just to be honest, like just to have you here is fucking crazy.
Well, thanks.
Because like I used to just like watch like all of your I've seen so many of your movies, and I'm just like, oh, I love him. Like you're like such a good actor.
Thank you.
So to have you here is like so crazy, and it means so much to me. And it's the 50th episode, and I wanted to make it really special. Yeah. So thank you for helping me do that.
No, thank you for coming on, and I'm glad that despite the couple years where it didn't happen, now it finally did.
Yeah, well,
it felt like just the right time.
Everything's about timing, and like I would never want someone to come in and do this until they were like ready, Yeah. And I think with the album being out and stuff, it just made sense. So, yeah. So Emile, thanks for coming on the pod.
Thank you.